Chad, week 5 of college football is here. We're finally seeing teams start to pull away up top and down below. We're seeing players leave their programs. UNLV's quarterback Matthew Sluka today says, oh, you're not paying me my money, I'm gone. But conference play is starting. This is when it's our chance to make money on all these college players. It starts off with the game of the week, potentially one of the games of the year. Georgia taking on Alabama. Could be a very, very fun matchup here. What are your initial thoughts?
Well, I mean, Bama's a dog at home against a ranked opponent. That's one of my favorite bets, right? Carson Beck ain't no Johnny football, so he's not going into Birmingham, he's not going into Tuscaloosa and beating Bama. That's kind of the long and short of it. And I think that neither of these teams have really shown us anything to get excited about for a top 5 program. So where am I going to put my money? I don't know. But as it stands today, I can't bet against Alabama at home getting points.
You know, if this were last year or the last 15 years, they had Nick Saban at the helm, I would 1,000% agree with you. In fact, I took Bama last year getting plus points against Georgia for that exact same reason. I thought long and hard. I said, listen, Georgia probably has the better team, but Bama has Nick Saban, and that's Kirby Smart's kryptonite. Well, he is gone, and I think Kirby Smart is still going to be hyper-focused to try to win this game. You know, this line opened up at an even spread and was bet up immediately to Georgia -2. That's usually sharp money that's trying to get them, in on the line the second it gets dropped. So I'm actually leaning with Georgia here in this spot. Their defense has been awesome so far this year. They held Clemson to only 3 points in the first week of the season. And then while their offense did struggle against Kentucky, you got to imagine that was Kentucky's biggest and best performance of the year on defense at home against the number 1 team in the country. And now Kirby Smart is off a bye week. I know Alabama is too, but with 2 weeks to prepare for this team, I think that Georgia's defense is just going to be too strong and keep Jalen Milroe contained so that the skill position players on Georgia can get it done. I think it's going to be an awesome game, but my lean here is Georgia. A game that I'm much more confident in my pick, though, is Baylor and BYU. And I'm riding with Baylor -3.5. This is a spot that I absolutely love. Call it the Snowman Special. Follow me on Twitter at snowman_sports. But this is a spot where the home unranked team is the favorite over a road ranked team. Everybody loves to see, oh, there's that little 23 by BYU's name and you're getting +3.5. It's a must take. And this spot has hit like 60 to 70% over the last couple of years that I've tracked. It is a pure system play, but even beyond the system, BYU is coming off of a big win against Kansas State. It's definitely a letdown spot for them. Kansas State looked absolutely horrible in that game. I think that BYU is not necessarily 25 points better than Kansas State. And on the other side, Baylor just lost on a devastating Hail Mary to Colorado, where they then blew it in overtime. So I think that Baylor, they have a really good coach in Dave Aranda. I think that he's going to be able to get his team hyped up and ready to go, even coming off that loss. We know that the crowd is going to be super hyped whenever a ranked team comes to town. You know that the fans get hyped, especially for a team in Texas like Baylor. So I think BYU is maybe a little bit overrated because of that win against Kansas State. They have a solid quarterback, but I'm riding with Baylor -3.5. I love this play.
You mentioned Colorado, last week beating Baylor. Colorado's a better team probably that we want to admit at this point. They put up 341 yards in the air with Shedeur Sanders. And, Colorado has probably two of the best players in the NCAA right now between Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter, and that's not to mention Jimmy Horn and Omarion Miller. They have a lot of things going for them, and that defense of theirs has really improved with Warren Sapp there, kind of with some leadership as a VP of analytics or something like that. But he's in there, he's training the defensive lineman, he's getting his nose in the middle of things, in the middle of practice. So Colorado's probably a lot better than we wanted to admit. And meanwhile, BYU beat the brakes off Kansas State, right? But I think we should just throw that tape away. Kansas State turned the ball over 3 times. They gave up a punt return touchdown, and it looks like they gave up by halftime. It was kind of an ugly game for them. So you mentioned a letdown. This is a perfect spot for a letdown. Just like we mentioned with the Ravens, coming off a huge win, I think it's a big letdown week, and Baylor's going to be super highly motivated to go out and get a win and make a big statement.
100%. Another team that's coming off of a big loss is Oklahoma at home, taking on Tennessee last week. They got absolutely smoked to the point they benched starting quarterback Jackson Arnold. One of the reasons I was on Tennessee last week was I didn't like how Arnold was playing. Brent Venables agreed. He is done. He is not starting this week. What do you think Oklahoma's going to do now with their new quarterback on the road at Jordan-Hare Stadium?
Well, I'm going to make a not so bold statement and say that neither Oklahoma or Auburn are very good this year. But in this matchup, I'm going to take Oklahoma. I think that, Auburn last week put up 431 yards of offense, intercepted Taylor Green twice, and still lost the game to the Hogs by 10 points. I don't know. I don't know what happened. I don't know how we won that game, but we won. And the point is Arkansas defense was bad. And this is going to fool some folks into thinking Auburn is better than they really are. And meanwhile, you've got Oklahoma, who kind of got humiliated at home against the number 6 Tennessee. Oklahoma was held to 36 yards on the ground. But if you think about who they were playing against, Tennessee through 4 weeks is number one defense in the nation. Defense only giving up 176 yards total each game. And the number 2 rushing defense behind only Ole Miss, who, let's be real, hasn't really played a warm body this year. So I think it's going to make some people really think that these teams are something that they're not, which is Oklahoma's really bad and Auburn is better. So I don't think either of those things are true. But the biggest element of this game, I think, is just a really lackluster start to the season from Jackson Arnold. He put the ball on the ground twice last week, and Brett Venables put in the true freshman, Michael Hawkins Jr., who looked pretty good. He got the offense going. They finally scored. And towards the end, it was kind of giving some people some sweat because it looked like they, a little bit more time, they may have mounted a comeback. So this week, I'm going to bet on the freshman. He looked good. I'm going to bet on Brett Venables over Hugh Freeze. I can't stand Hugh Freeze. So I'm hoping he loses. I'm hoping he loses big, and I'm hoping to make some money here.
I thought this line was crazy when it came out. How is Auburn only +2? Oklahoma is clearly a much better team. And then I was looking more into it, and, their offense has been horrible this year, just straight up horrible. But as you said, they looked a lot better with Hawkins Jr. in there. I thought that he looked really, really good, and I think the team was much more motivated to play behind him when he came into the game. So I agree with you. I like Oklahoma here. In fact, the only thing that can make me change my mind is if somehow Auburn becomes the favorite. Then I'll reconsider. But as long as they're the dog, I will ride with Oklahoma for sure on the road with you. All right, heading out to the West Coast, Wisconsin, taking on Southern California, -15.5 for USC after coming off just a humiliating loss to Michigan. I mean, we talked about this game on the Bro Show last week, and I said Alex Orji cannot throw. Well, how did I know that? And the University of Southern California coaches did not. The guy only threw for 32 yards, and they still won the game. They had really 3 big run plays that determined it, and it was USC's bad tackling at the very end that cost them the game, coupled with a really, really bad pick 6 from Miller Moss. All things considered, USC should have won that game by probably double digits, and they lost. So now they're taking on Wisconsin. I think they're going to be very motivated, right? That was a bad loss to Michigan. They still have the dreams of the college football playoff. They still can make it, but it's a must-win game against Wisconsin. Wisconsin is just in shambles. Their starting quarterback, Tyler Van Dyke, injured. He's now out for the year. And let's not forget that USC's defensive coordinator, Alex Grinch, comes from Wisconsin. So he knows the team pretty well. He knows Luke Fickell and what he wants to do. And it's probably a little bit of a revenge spot for him. So all these factors combined, Wisconsin having to fly out to the West Coast, USC on a potential revenge game after a bad loss. I'm riding with USC. I think they're going to blow Wisconsin out of the water.
Fade. I got to fade you here. Wisconsin's quarterback, Tyler Van Dyke, went down with a season-ending injury against Alabama. And, the team's just probably not going to be the same with Braden Locke. But 16 points for USC, I don't know. Miller Moss has been good. We talked about how outstanding he was coming in with the expectations coming behind your guy in Chicago. But 890 yards, 5 touchdowns, one interception through 3 games. With a bye in there, which is pretty solid. But Wisconsin's coming off a bye this week. So they're going to have 2 weeks to prepare. And that's kind of a big red flag for me. And when you look at USC's wins, they beat LSU, blah. And they beat a down Michigan, another blah. So 16 points, it's a lot for them. I think Wisconsin's going to be motivated at least to come in and keep it close. So I don't like this pick, Jake. Sorry.
Well, if you want to fade me and ride with Chad, go to brothrow.com/YouTube now to sign up to place your bets for all college football action for this week, NFL, MLB. Now we're getting to the playoffs, NBA when that starts. Or, of course, you could ride with me and take USC. But, Chad, let's move on to the next game, headed to your favorite team, the Arkansas Razorbacks, headed on the road to Texas A&M. Arkansas is +4. They came off a nice win against Auburn last week. Can they go back-to-back wins here?
Yeah, I think so. I think they can win. I think they can certainly cover. Arkansas is 1-9 versus A&M in the last 10 years. So not great, but both teams this year are 3-1. Arkansas lost miserably in overtime to Oklahoma State. There's a number, one of any probably 6 plays in that game. If they don't turn the ball over or try and suplex a player in overtime, give them an automatic first down, that game could have turned out differently. We'd be looking down the barrel at 4-0. So A&M's only loss came in the first week against Notre Dame. They did not look great, but I didn't think Notre Dame looked that great either. I actually think that the over is probably a good play here. I think both defenses have shown they can give up yards and give up points, and a lot of them in the same game. So when we look back, Arkansas kind of looked flat against UAB. They gave up over 350 yards of offense, and as a Hog fan watching that game, I turned it off at least a half dozen times. Turned it back on. I get a notification we scored or something happened. I turned it back on, but it looked nasty. But I think that this game is going to come down to the positional matchups at this point. I like Taylon Green over Marcel Reed, who obviously has been an upgrade from Connor Wegman. Connor Wegman, he got hurt, and now he's healthy, and he's still going to be the backup. So both of these guys, Taylon and Marcel, they can use their legs. They're both decent passers. I think that Taylon has a lot of polishing that needs to happen. And as he progresses through the season, I think that Bobby Petrino is going to be able to help get him some of that polish. And I think he's going to get stronger. And I think that in a game of this size against this old school rivalry, right, Southwest Conference, I remember hearing about this when I was a kid, when my grandpa played and all kinds of stuff. We just always seem to kind of get up for this game. And if you look at the scores over the last 10 years or so, there was really only one blowout. It's usually within a score or within, at least under 10. And Arkansas's program in the last 10 years has not been strong. I mean, so, I'm going to move on to another position. Jaquindon Jackson has been incredible. As a Hog fan, you watch this guy over 118 yards per game, 6.8 per carry. I couldn't tell you the last time we saw something like that, maybe since McFadden, but I like him over Le'Veon Moss, who's running the ball for A&M. He's also pretty solid, but I just like these two guys who are the key elements of the offense over the key elements of the offense for A&M. And then the last thing is Bobby Petrino. Bobby Petrino came in from A&M last year. He's the offensive coordinator for Arkansas, and he's kind of an old head. He's been around a while. He's been around the block, and I really think that he's got a chip on his shoulder as his revenge game to go in to Arlington and beat A&M and show them that they lost something pretty special. Meanwhile, A&M picked up Colin Klein, who's pretty solid, comes in from Kansas State. I think he's going to do a good job, especially with Marcel Reed. He's going to be able to do a lot more things in this offense. But when it comes down to it, I just think this game's going to be too close. It's a coin flip on who wins, and so I have to take the points.
I misspoke a little earlier. I said Arkansas travels to Texas A&M. They do travel to Texas, but the game is at Jerry World, the Cowboys Stadium. It should be a little bit of a home field edge for Texas A&M, but not obviously the level it would be at College Station. I like the points here as well for Arkansas. You hit on the nose when you were talking about Taylon Green, their starting quarterback. The guy is one of the most electric runners in all of football. He has 60-plus rush yards each of the first 4 weeks. In fact, 3 over 80. And keep in mind, sacks count for negative rush yards in college football. So he probably actually has even more than that when you take away some of the sack yardage. As you said, Texas A&M has not been particularly impressive this year. They lost to Notre Dame, and that loss looks worse as the season goes along because Notre Dame, they lost to Northern Illinois. They have not been the dominant top 10 team we may have expected after week 1. They barely eked out a win last week against Bowling Green. So with the skill of Arkansas's, quarterback and running back in Jaquindon Jackson, I like getting the plus points here in the spot as well. Moving on from your favorite team to my favorite team and my alma mater. Should I throw on the Indiana hat for this one? We got Hoosiers.
Do it.
Not with the headphones on. We got the Hoosiers at home against Maryland. Indiana is -7. Indiana has won 4 games this season. Every single win has been by more than 24 points. Curtis Rourke, the starting quarterback for Indiana, 8 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. He looks like he is in full command of the offense. And maybe most importantly, Indiana, according to the advanced stats, has the 4th best offense, the 4th most efficient offense this season. Ohio State, Ole Miss, Texas, Indiana. That's your list. I've watched a lot of Indiana football in my life. This team looks like the best team since the 2019 team with Penix that only had 1 loss. I think that this team is a legitimate playoff contender. That's right, a playoff contender. You look at the schedule, they're going to lose to Ohio State, and that's the only guaranteed loss on the schedule. They can beat Michigan, they can beat Nebraska, and they can beat Maryland. I think the team is playing too well. The offense has been too good. The team is rolling too well. Curtis Signetti, our head coach, has just been a complete beast. I'm hoping that he's, doesn't leave very soon, because there's going to be some teams that have seen his success at James Madison, see his resume working for Nick Saban, and now coming in and showing right away that he's able to bring in amazing transfers and get it done early on. I think Indiana continues to roll at home against a Maryland team that looks to be a little bit overrated with Billy Edwards here at quarterback.
Yeah, you mentioned overrated. Turpin's 3-1, which is pretty good. Hoosiers 4-0, who have just been absolutely rolling on offense, like you mentioned. Curtis Rourke, quarterback's been pretty solid. Justin Ellison running the ball, awesome. They've got other weapons like Price, Williams, Cross. All those guys have been getting involved. You look at the game-by-game box scores, and everybody, they're just spreading the ball around. They've got so many options. They're able to move the ball and score. But, Maryland also been moving the ball this year. Billy Edwards Jr. has been fantastic too. At the beginning of the season, I said, Maryland, they lost Tagovailoa, and what do they have? Well, they have him. 1,155 yards, 8 touchdowns, 2 interceptions through 4 games. That's pretty solid. But I think that this game's going to come down to defense. And you didn't mention this, which is surprising, but Indiana currently has the 3rd ranked defense in the college football, giving up only 199 yards per game. 125 on the, let's see here,
and under 10 points per game. I figured, there's too much good to talk about the offense. We don't even need to bring up the defense.
Well, yeah, 125 yards passing and 74 yards on the ground giving up is pretty solid. So I think it's going to be too much to handle. I think Indiana's going to roll.
And now we move on to the final game of this video. Remember, if you guys do want to sign up to take any of our action, sign up to brothrow.com/YouTube now. Chad, before we wrap up this video, South Alabama headed to LSU. Not necessarily the glitz and glamour of regular Alabama at LSU, but should be an interesting game here. 21.5 point favorite, by far the biggest line of this video. What you got here?
My new favorite thing to do before college football each week is to look and see who LSU is playing and see if they can score points. And South Alabama can score points. They put up, I think, 87. Northwestern State, Appalachian State scored almost 50. And you look at LSU's performance this year on defense, Nicholls State kept it close. Their quarterback, who probably runs a 5.2 40, busted straight up the middle for a 65-yard touchdown. So I'm expecting to see quite a lot of scoring, maybe by both. And that kind of leans me to the plus 21.5. It's just going to be way too much. I don't think LSU has it in them to blow this team out. And it's going to be a close. In proximity, South Alabama's close to LSU. They'll be up for this game. And like I said, they're actually pretty good. It's not a Big 5 or Big 4, Big 5 conference. It's just that they're going to be able to score on LSU, and that's the simple bit.
Yeah, I look at South Alabama, and I would say that game against Northwestern State, we can't really count too much because Northwestern State is just such a bad team. But then they went out on the road at Appalachian State and put up 48 points against a team that was threatening to potentially be that group of 5 candidate. They've been playing pretty well so far this season. So I do agree with you. Their offense is pretty solid. LSU, as you said, their defense has been rough, and their best defensive player, Harold Perkins, now injured, out for the year. So that should make their defense even worse. I do tend to agree with you that it's too many points for a defense as bad as LSU's. That will do it, though, for this edition of the College Football Bro Show. Chad, anything else you got before we sign off on this?
Give me a winning week, please. Let me have a winning week, God.
Well, we are definitely...
But hey, you know what, Jake? You know what? One man's trash is another man's treasure. So if you want to fade me, fade me until you can't.
Not this week. We got the winning picks right here in this video. Appreciate all you guys for tuning in to the College Football Bro Show. Check out our NFL picks for week 4 as well. That video should already be live. But we will see you guys in the next one. Peace.